Good morning. I haven't been on for several days because I grew depressed realizing on episode 31 that it was all about making money. Even though I was sincere in telling my friend Al that he could be helped by this assisted memory chip, I thought it was too, uh, well, but now we're out there in California and I realize that from the beginning, there was a huge amount of money behind this. But now that I realize the motives behind the huge amount of money is just to make more and more money. And then also, I watched a podcast by this psychiatrist that was talking about the giant pharmaceutical firms making some kind of medication for every kind of possible mental ailment you might have, and how they were in not overt coercion with the doctors, but they have the manual that they use to determine what your mental problem is. So when you go into your family physician and you have some kind of problem, oh yeah, I've got the pill. It just came out. This is marvelous. And I think the most insidious thing about that was that Prozac, which has been around for a long time, by Pfizer, got relabeled and reintroduced to the doctor community as a remedy for PMS. So, if you're a woman, you come into your gynecologist or your family provider and you say, I'm really having problems with my depression or my mood changes or whatever your PMS symptoms are, which are part of, it's Mother Nature. So, yeah, I've got just the thing. It's a new thing. It's marvelous. And it turns out it's just Prozac under a different name. And now you have all these women that are strung out on Prozac. And I've come off of Prozac myself. Anytime you get into that serotonin reuptake inhibitors, where you're dealing with the chemistry at the neurons, the serotonin reuptake, you're really messing with somebody's personality, and which it does. And every individual is different, has a different reaction. Um, but it's all about making money. And even this turned out to be about making money. I didn't have that in mind in the beginning. In the earlier episodes, I introduced the idea about Al finding UFOs, and then I was going to have the story turn out where it was aliens from somewhere else, from Sirius, that star system, or the Pleiadians. There's evidence that somebody's been playing Star Trek with us on the planet for a long, long time, trying to uplift the species. And what better way to uplift us than to integrate us with assisted memory, computer assistance, and that would be a whole new level of human beings. As I proposed earlier, if you have this implant, you're able to think 1,000 times faster and have 1,000 times more information available to you in the form of enhanced memory as anyone else on your neighbors. So if you got $250,000 for the implant, they can make it so. Or if you can't afford that and you just want some relief from your Alzheimer's or your dementia, yeah, we can do that for $3,000 to $5,000, like an interocular lens. That was the business model that I talked about. Yeah. So and uh, I just and then there's also the notion of the other people in the steam room and what kind of follow on that might be in a kind of a novel form. Um, but all that put aside, I really need to continue thinking about if we go down to San Diego and now at this level that we have up in Silmar, where people the 24 in groups of 8 are first of all introduced to the ability that, I mean, it takes that amount of time for the tendrils to grow across the cap of the brain and begin to make attachment to the neurons. And and then in that 2 weeks, you get accustomed to having this elevated mental activity and dealing with that with a significant partner so that there's emotional content. And then I didn't know in the story that Al and Erotica would begin to have difficulties, but that's understandable because it was a passionate romance that began under circumstances of distress and the loss of his first wife and the knowledge that his identity had disappeared. Uh, so it wasn't a I had that in college where my college girlfriend, we were just fine as long as we didn't talk to each other. We had an excellent relationship. A lot of enjoyment. We enjoyed each other considerably as long as we didn't talk to each other. So now I got Alan Erotic in that same fix. And I don't know what the other three couples up there with him are having that same adjustment period. But as I've said before, there's a big staff of psychiatrists to counsel them and to coach them through that because they need to make that level of bonding because at the next level down in San Diego, they begin to get into telepathy. And that's where I get into the other thing. There's another podcast, 2077 and something else it's called. But you can do the research on YouTube yourself if you're so inclined. Just start searching on nanobots. And these kind of things come up as well as my own channel. You'll find other associated. It comes up, and it's the same notion. Look, we're on the verge of being able to implant someone and then cure their mental problems with implants rather than surgery or pharmaceuticals. Like One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, that was the remedy at that time. Let's just give them electroshocks, or let's give them a frontal lobotomy, and that cures all their mental problems. Uh, but this is, not brutal, right? And it enhances, right? Especially if you got the money to afford this. So there will be a layer of really rich people that are able to afford this enhancement. Let me talk about that a moment. They're already doing this. If you look in that 2077, where they can take a mouse and they can record what it has in the memory and then put it through a stage of forgetfulness where it doesn't know where the reward is, and then they can re-implant to the front of his brain, the frontal cortex, and then the mouse will remember where the rewards were and then go find it. So that's what they're proposing for Alzheimer's is, look, while you're well, I can record all your memories, and then when you start to forget your memories, I can just put them back in your brain. Uh, and that's not science fiction. That's beginning to be science fact. In fact, I'm having trouble keeping my story ahead of the technology because the next thing that happens is it's possible, even proposed, if not already doing so, because I told you earlier, like if I can imagine talking about it, there's somebody out there actually doing these kind of things. You can record every thought in your brain, everything that makes you what you are as a self in your brain, record that, offload it, and then when you die, you can have it re-implanted into like a volunteer body. I think there's even a science fiction movie out to that effect. But let's put it in more concrete terms. We got to talk about Al and Erotica. They have accelerated mental abilities. And then I was going to also in the story talk about how the nanobots get loose, and because they correct the spell check the DNA, every cell duplication turns out perfect replica of itself. And then another part of the nanobot that actually corrects the aging errors in the cell's nucleus, so that every cell that gets reproduced is not only, it begins more and more perfect. So Al and Erotica end up with these perfect bodies, But yet, okay, so that's great for their health and all kinds of organic disorders. But suppose they get in a car crash and they get crushed to death or something. Well, all I have to, excuse me, all I have to do is grab a bit of their DNA, have the DNA grown out in a petri dish, have that DNA implanted into an embryo, implant that, and then I got a clone. And now I got a clone of Al that looks just like Al. I got a clone of Adrotica that looks just like Adrotica. And then I reimplant the memory, and voila, they are resurrected. I mean, the true resurrection. And maybe I ought to leave this episode at that and call it resurrection. Thank you for tuning in today. I look forward to more episodes with more exercises of my own imagination in my attempt to keep ahead of technology. Thanks. Bye bye.